Universal Orlando now is requiring guests with disabilities to pre-register for their disability accessibility through something called IBCCES. IBCCES stands for the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards. The name, as well as their website, when you go on it, gives off the impression that this is a government agency governing board, such as the ADA or the DOJ. It is not. This IBCCES is a private company out of Jacksonville, Florida. It would be the same thing as me creating a company and calling it the International Board of Nicole, registered under the Florida Division of Corporations, a privately held company. They have complaints about them under the Better Business Bureau, certification processes and such. So they are a money-making entity. They are a privately held company. They are not a government agency. And their name, the International so-and-so, gives off this vibe that they are a governing agency. They are not. They are a privately held company, and that is what they are. And they are giving off this vibe that they are a governmental agency oversight ability. So that was the first mention that I wanted to make, as the common person, I feel, is going to be honestly very abused by this process. Universal Orlando, prior to this change, would have you simply go to guest services, describe the nature of your disability without giving them the name of it, requiring no documentation in order to qualify for what is known as the AAP, or the Attraction Assistance Pass, which comes in both orange and gold. And this is the equivalent of the Disney DAS Pass. I have officially reported Universal Orlando, Universal Studios, to the ADA through a complaint form process with the DOJ, the Department of Justice, who handles civil rights matters such as disability complaints or discrimination matters. I will also be filling out an additional email through the email way of complaining to them, but I have officially complained. I have officially made a complaint to the Department of Justice where I have a case number. That means it is a slow process, but it means that the Department of Justice has the case now. There's a case number attached to it, and they will be investigating Universal Orlando as well as this process of IBCCES. I have made an official complaint against Universal Orlando to the Department of Justice. And Universal Orlando is, as well as Universal Hollywood, apparently, is now giving sole discretion to this privately held company out of Jacksonville to decide whether persons with disabilities qualify to meet accessibility at their parks. Universal Orlando has stated this on their website, that they have now contracted with IBCCES. They have also stated on their website that they will no longer hear accessibility requests through their guest services, even though they are a company under the same regulations of anything that happens federal, such as the ADA. What they're saying is that we're not handling this. We are giving our sole discretion to IBCCES, and once they decide whether you are worthy or not, this privately held company out of Jacksonville, that they will then decide what accommodations you get. Privately held company, one of the women that's in charge of the company, she has a degree in marketing and PR. That is who is deciding whether you, as well as probably a million of these outsourced agents, the way these companies do, to decide if you are qualified for a accessibility. I believe that this IBCCES process that Universal Orlando has enacted upon as a way of trying to make people gain access to disability access as difficult as possible, because they realized they were losing money through their money-making operations regarding their fast passes. I believe that this is a grave injustice to people with disabilities, and I believe that this is a ADA violations like you have never seen. If you read the ADA site, basically it says that none of this is allowed. Let's begin into the varying violations that I am seeing. When you go on the IBCCES site to apply for accommodations, essentially at Universal Orlando, you will see a drop-down menu that lists a variety of accommodations. such as wheelchair access, hearing impairment, can't stand on the line because of certain triggers, bathroom issues, service animals is also listed. And as you go down to the drop down, at the bottom of the drop down menu, it says that these accommodations are not guaranteed, and it says that literal financial money may be endured. So this IBCCES has stated that these accommodations, such as wheelchair access, restroom accessibility, having a service animal, may come with a financial charge. This is the company, the private company that Universal Orlando has contracted and is standing by. Universal can disagree with that all they want if they end up disagreeing with it, but the fact that they have contracted this company and they say we stand behind them and you have to agree to their terms, and the website says, I'm including all the images here, the IBCCES site says these are a list of the variety of accommodations that you may be requesting. These requests may not be guaranteed, and that these requests may come with a financial cost. That is absolutely an ADA violation. They cannot charge a financial cost for wheelchair accessibility. They cannot charge a financial cost to have a service animal. They cannot have a financial cost to be granted the ability not to be in the queue because you have autism or some other disability. This is absolutely against the ADA and against federal law, and that is why I have turned them into the government. I have turned Universal Orlando into the federal government. I have made a federal complaint against them to the ADA Department of Justice, and I will be providing all of this supplemental imaging of the different chats and images that I have as support for this. I want to read to you essentially, I'm going to read it from my phone because this is a lot of what it is. And this is something that I have told Universal Orlando and tweeted on Twitter. I said, Universal Orlando, I just got off a concerning chat with IBCCES, a private company who screens for your guests with disabilities for accommodation requests at your resort. They told me in chat, and they have told me this in chat, and I do have the chat images I'm going to include in this video so you can see. IBCCES has told. So I got into a chat with IBCCES, which is the company that Universal Orlando has contracted to screen persons with disabilities. I asked them about this statement that is on the IBCCES site, which says that disability accommodations, obviously including service animals, may come with a financial cost to the person with disabilities. Their response was, in chat, and I'm going to provide imaging of this, they said the theme park could charge for disability accommodations, service animals, if they chose to. I also asked them in chat if someone had a service animal and they were checking into a resort hotel, would there be a financial charge for the service animal? And they said it is up to the resort hotel what and if cost price they will charge for a service animal. This is another ADA violation. You cannot be charged a financial cost for a service animal. I asked them, I noticed on your site that you have service animal as an accommodation that I need to be pre-screened for. They said that is correct. I will provide that as well as a chat. They said it is highly encouraged to provide documentation specifically providing need of service animal requirement, which will be noted on the IBCCES issued card to get approval of your service animal so that IBCCES can state whether it is a service animal or not. So they have stated that not only can a hotel charge you a financial cost for your service animal, that it needs registration proof through IBCCES to prove that it is a service animal. They also advised me that to have your IBCCES identification card ready, where it will show that you need a service animal on it, so that in the event someone comes up to you and asks, is it a service animal, you can show them proof that it is a service animal. This is an ADA violation. The ADA states that someone can only ask you 2 questions. Is it a service dog? And what task is the animal provided? No documentation is required. And this IBCCES is stating that you need to provide documentation for your service animal proving it is a service animal and that you need it, and to have your identification IBCCES card ready to go to prove that it is a service animal. This is a direct ADA violation under federal law. So Universal Orlando, who has contracted IBCCES, stands behind them as allowing them to have full discretion over you, is now stating that you need documentation proving you have a disability. This is against the ADA. The ADA says that, I will include this here, the ADA says under the ADA, which is federal law, that no documentation is required to prove a disability. A lot of what Universal, I think, is trying to do here, as well as this IBCCES, there are certain times where documentation can be requested regarding a disability, such as licensing and standardized admissions tests. I have a history. For example, I took the LSAT, and when I took the LSAT, I had to submit documentation to so that the LSAT, which is would be able to identify certain accommodations that you need. And just a disclaimer, I am not an attorney and I never actually went to law school. It's just one part of my journey where I took the LSAT, and during this process I had to get accommodations so that I could take the LSAT, which is a standardized admissions test, and that is a certain area where the ADA allows for them to request documentation. But this is not a licensing. This is you trying to go on a ride at Universal Orlando, and they're trying to say that that is the same thing, and it is not. The ADA says that a person with disabilities has the same right to accommodations as someone who does not have a disability. For example, if you woke up today and you said, I want to go to Universal Studios and I'm going to go wait on the lines and I'm going to go on all the rides. Universal's saying, if you have disabilities, you can't do that. Why? Because the registration process for IBCCES alphabet has decided that you have to be screened, and it could take 48 plus hours for you to potentially qualify for this identification papers. And so that would mean that if you went to the theme park and you didn't have this registered, you would be discriminated against and you would not have accessibility to accommodations. Again, they have very clearly stated on the IBCCES site that financial costs could occur. I have touched base with Universal on this, and there was a woman in chat under customer service. She initially denied this, but then I said, IBCCES, who you are contracting with, is disagreeing with you. And if I have to go through IBCCES in order to qualify, and you won't actually deal with accommodations, who am I listening to? It is very possible with the certain way this is set up that someone with a service animal, if you have a service animal, as long as this IBCCES is written and composed in the way it is, and you should absolutely expect that you are at the park, cast member stops you, and instead of those two questions being asked to you, if you are traveling to Universal Orlando and you had a service animal, it would be a common interaction that a cast member could potentially stop you, ask you if it is a service animal, on which case they, according to the ADA, can only ask you two questions. Is this a service animal, and what is the animal's task in providing you? According to these new standards, since service animal is now listed according to the IBCCES site and you have to prove documentation, it is highly likely that you could be walking in the park, have a cast member stop you with a service animal, and they say, I need to see papers. What does that mean, papers? The ADA says I'm not required to show you any identification or prove it as a service animal according to the ADA, which is the federal government. And they would say, no, we follow IBCCES law here at Universal Orlando. You need to show us papers. What does that mean? You need to pull up your identification card and show that you have proof of a service animal. This is a ADA violation. This is, again, completely clear-cut against the ADA. It does not exist, okay? It's highly likely that if you are checking into a Universal hotel, they will again require you to show IBCCES paper proof that your animal is a documented animal. This is against the ADA. You could be possibly charged a financial burden because the IBCCES site says very clearly financial charges may apply. I got into chat with the IBCCES and the representative said, I asked them, am I going to be charged a financial burden at the hotel? They said, it's up to the hotel. And Universal is saying, we follow this company. It's like, how clear can you get that you are violating the ADA? Are you actually at a point, Universal, where you're going to put up a slogan that says, we are Universal, we don't follow federal law here, we don't follow the ADA here, sue us, we don't care, make a federal complaint against us, we'll pay out a settlement, we don't care? Is that the point Universal is at? Because it sure seems like it is. So now, according to Universal Orlando, they are commissioning with this contracted third-party site which says you could be charged for your disability, there could be a fee, your service animal needs proof, your service animal could have a cost checking into a hotel, show papers to the cast member that stops you that it's proof. If you don't register within 48 hours of your trip, then you're screwed. I'm sorry, you can't offer any accessibility to you. If you are traveling alone to Universal Orlando and you do not have the physical ability to fill out this form to request accommodations, then tough on you. Whereas you used to be able to go to guest services and get help, they're saying they don't care. What they're saying is make a complaint to the DOJ. So you will not be accommodated last minute at Universal, even though the ADA says you are afforded every right of someone who does not have a disability. So I did communicate with guest services at Universal Orlando, and they said you should not expect to be charged for a service animal, even though IBCCES says otherwise, and they have commissioned and contracted with this company. They also said, which was a weird line, they can't speak for other hotels or other theme parks because they don't know how they operate. It's like they follow federal law. And, you know, maybe IBCCES is just saying that as a precaution. It's like, what are you talking about, guest services Orlando? It's like federal law is federal law. It does not up to another hotel or another resort. Or I could bring up the point in itself, a lot of your hotels at Universal are like separately contracted thing. Aventura is separate than Lowe's and such. So what are you saying? I could have one experience at one hotel and maybe another experience at another? I've seen some varying opinions going back and forth online. Some people have said, oh, this is a good way to make sure people are not fakes. Other people have recognized the creepiness of uploading your personal documentation to the internet for who knows who to see. One of the things they said is you're allowed to upload is an IEP, which is a behavioral plan for most likely students on how they can improve with their disorder. It's like, do you understand how sensitive this information is? And they want you to upload it to the II Alphabet Company, who is a privately held company out of Jacksonville. Are you kidding me? The same company who told me in chat all of these various things which are ADA violations. So where is my information going? Is it going to be up on an internet? Is it going to be on Facebook? Where is it going to be? This is absolutely ADA violations. They said that no documentation is required. Absolutely, that's a no-no with service animals. The fact that they are requiring you to provide proof of a service animal and then to show identification papers, where have we heard this before in history? I would go back to Disney and hug the mouse before I go back to Universal. I will not be going back to Universal in the near future. Could I go back there a year or so from now? Who knows? But I had a reservation planned for a 5-night stay at Sapphire for this November. I am not going. I have canceled that reservation, and I will be canceling my Universal annual pass, which I was in where I could pay it on a monthly basis. I didn't have to pay the upfront amount anymore. I am canceling that. I would much rather go back to Disney, who has not as of yet enacted this. If you have a service animal and in the near future you go to Universal Orlando and you are requested by a cast member either in the park or checking into the hotel for your IBCCES proof that you have a service animal, that is not okay under the ADA or federal law. And honestly, if that occurs to you, that a cast member asks for proof on your phone, you have a duty to report that incident to the Department of Justice when it happens, and I do expect it to happen. Okay, unfortunately, people with service animals and disabilities have been through enough, and you're used to having, harassment with service animals. Unfortunately, it's probably going to get worse now, and you're probably likely to have an incident where they ask for this proof. through this identification card, since it is one of the things listed, and it's listed as one of the possible things that it could have a financial charge. If you end up having a situation checking into the Universal Hotel where they require proof of the service animal or a charge, it is your duty to report to the Department of Justice, because this is not acceptable. You know it doesn't sound right. You know it doesn't sound right if you are potentially at Universal at City Walk in their shops, checking into the hotel, and that you could possibly now have a cast member come up to you and ask for papers on your service animal. You know that is not correct. You know that is not in coordination with the ADA or the federal government. You know it's not correct. You know it doesn't feel right. You know this whole IBCCES alphabet does not sound right. It doesn't feel right. And often in life, what doesn't feel right is not right. And that's why I did my part in reporting them to the DOJ. And it will take time, but I hope that they can correct this so that people with disabilities are not abused at Universal Orlando. And at this point, I would much rather go back to Disney, much as it pains me to say that, because it's still not as bad as what I see happening at Universal Orlando. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you all. Please do stay on top of things that are happening to you. If something happens to you that's an injustice, please report it. Thank you again, and I will see you again in my next video, and bye.